back to the VET S.O.S podcast, and we are so happy to be here in season 6 of the VET S.O.S podcast. Um, we are brought to you once again by the Who You Know Network and part of the Parade Deck community. Uh, we are very blessed to have a very special guest with us today, Tony Grinston, the 16th Sergeant Major of the Army and the current CEO of Army Emergency Relief. Tony was Sergeant Major of the Army for a good part of my career. So it's just great to be sitting down with you and learn a little bit about you here and about the mission you have going on. And of course, today we got a special guest host with us. We got Dr. Hira from our Veteran Educational Resource Show. She's filling in for Keith while Keith is out. How you doing today, Dr. Hira?
Doing great. Excited to learn about this.
This is fantastic. All right, so we'll jump right into it. We got Tony Grinston, a native of Casper, Alabama. Michael Grinston became the Chief Executive Officer of Army Emergency Relief in 2024. Grinston served 36 years in the Army and had the distinction of being named the 16th Sergeant Major of the Army, the highest ranking enlisted soldier, and the Army Chief of Staff's personal advisor on quality of life issues. These matters impacted a force of approximately 1 million soldiers and an operating budget of $180 billion. That's still scary to think about.
Yeah.
It is an honor and a pleasure to have you here today, Tony. How are you doing today?
Hey, great, Shawn. Thanks for having me.
We're excited to sit down with you and get into this because AER does some amazing things, and from your time in the service, it's some people loved it, some people hated it, had very strong opinions one way or the other about AER. But we're going to get into some of the benefits of it, and especially one program that I used personally when I was transitioning. So can't wait to talk a little bit about that. But before we get into it, let's talk a little bit about your transition. That's what we do here. So how did your transition out of the Army go as the Sergeant Major of the Army? I'm sure it was very smooth, no headaches, and everything went perfect.
Oh, it was great. We'll talk about it. It actually went pretty well. I got a lot of funny stories, just like always. I do want to clear up the whole name thing. Is when I transitioned, I said, I'm Michael A. Grinston, but I've always gone by Tony. And people's like, why did he change his name? I was like, I never changed my name. I said, if you've ever met me in person, I always say, hi, I'm Tony. Um, but if you read my name, my birth certificate is Michael Anthony Grinston, and my mom called me Tony, but I've always introduced myself as Tony. So when I transitioned, everybody thought, oh, he changed his name. Like, well, that's a different person. No, same dude. Sorry. But just people got to know me better. Is like, okay, I've always gone by Tony. And also, what it did was help me distinguish those that knew me and who didn't. When the Sergeant Major of the Army and you got a million people, they're like, oh, I know Mike. And it's like, I don't think you do. Because I don't know who Mike is. It's Tony. And so I really appreciate that. But the transition was funny. So one of the funny stories is I come back in. I turned in my TA-50, and I was coming in the Pentagon, and the G3 goes, you were doing what? You don't have somebody to do that for you? Like, no, sorry, I don't. So yeah, I had to turn in all my gear just like everybody else. And then the next transition was I really wanted to do something extraordinary, something I'd never done. I wanted to expand who I was. I didn't want to be limited by just being the Sergeant Major of the Army. I know that sounds crazy because you think that's limitless, but I thought I could still do more. So I interviewed for jobs that no enlisted ever had. I interviewed for a CEO position for another company, not Army Emergency Relief, and I posted on LinkedIn that I didn't get a second interview. I mean, I had people call me like I'm in therapy. It's like, are you okay? You got told no. I was like, man, you have no idea how many times I've been told no in my life. Um, but I really wanted to expand on who I was. I wanted to be and better and greater, than I'd ever was, and I wanted to keep growing. And then when I got the position as the CEO of AER, I was overjoyed. And I've learned something new every day. I still get to help soldiers, but um, it's a challenge. I didn't know how to be a CEO. I've never done that before, so I'm incredibly happy that I got a chance to continue to learn and grow in the new job that I have, and I get to help soldiers and their families every day. I love it. So the transition was great, and even if I didn't get the job, I was like, man, you should never be sorry for the Sergeant Major of the Army when they retire. They'll be fine, you know. There's a lot of opportunities out there for SMA. I worry about those that aren't the Sergeant Major of the Army, the Sergeant First Class, the Master Sergeant, battalion sergeant majors as they transition because they don't have the opportunities as the sergeant major of the army would. So yeah, it was good. It was a good transition.
Yeah, I just when you start talking about CIF turn in, I'm like, well, I had like 4 footlockers full of stuff. I can only imagine after 34 years how many footlockers you had.
Right? Okay, don't short me, Shawn. I had 36.
Oh, 36. Sorry.
Yeah, and I took a video of my floor in my basement was covered with army gear, the whole floor. And then I got to CIF, and I'm like, classic CIF, they're like, oh, I got these 4 duffel bags. It's like, we're not sure we can take that. I'm like, okay. so the CIF manager came in, and the worker behind the desk was like, I don't know, we're not supposed to take that. I'm like, what do I do with this excess equipment? I mean, I don't need it. And they're like, I don't know. So the manager came in like, oh no, we're taking it. He's like, I was gonna wait. I was like, wait till I get back to my office. Somebody's gonna be in my. They were gonna be standing in my office. So, and for all those privates that retire, leave the army and they don't have that opportunity, I'm sorry for that. But man, I had a 2 truckload, a carload full of stuff. It was awesome.
Yeah, sometimes you should pay attention to the photos that are on the wall when you walk into your building. It's
Oh, yeah, and it was still there too. So.
that's great. Oh man. Um, so the transition piece, like you said, you feel bad sometimes for the sergeant first classes and what have you as they transition, but like even I have a good friend who's still active, sergeant major, and he had one of those kind of weird careers in the fact that he was infantry most of his career till sergeant first class. Then he transitioned to intel, and then was put in a first sergeant role. So never did intel work, and then he made sergeant major, and then so he's never actually done intel work. And I'm like, of everybody I know, you need to do a skill bridge.
Yeah, yeah, 100%. So it's like this. Um, you know, you just never know where you'll lead up. But and those, even if you did intel or entry, you never know where you're going to end up. So pick something that broaden your perspective. Go do a skill bridge, do something, but don't limit yourself. That's probably the best advice in transitions. You're greater than you think you are. Now you're going to have to prove it. This is my frustration because I'm an employer now. People, I'm worth this. I got to be up here, and okay, well, probably not. You might have to start here, and you're going to show your worth a lot faster. And people tell you that, but people just don't listen. It's like I'm great. I said I know you're great, but people don't know that. They don't know the value of the military, and I would say, even as I transitioned as the CEO, there's a lot of business stuff I didn't know. We're talking private equity, investments, and how do we do money and fundraising, and tax forms and audits. I don't know any of that. But here's one thing I did know: I knew leadership. And then I have a few civilian employees, and they're like, "Well, why would you do that? And how did you learn that?" I was like, "I learned that as a sergeant in the United States Army." So we had leadership in spades, but it took me a long time to grow. And I would say anybody that transitions, same thing. You gotta, don't come in. They don't know. They may not know your value unless they had served a long time in the Army. You're gonna have to grow through that transition, and then prove that you're worth. You've got incredible leadership skills that I haven't seen matched in any organization yet. And the Army education and the leadership is phenomenal. You're going to have to grow in other ways, though.
Yeah, no, that's spot on. Completely agree with you, Doctor Hira. What do you think?
The transition stories are always so impactful because again, we hear them from all different levels, right? And here we have you sharing, hey, I was the senior enlisted, and there's still a humble part of the transition, right? Finding your space and your footing in the new environment, understanding there's still some industry knowledge to be learned wherever you go, and I think it's a great piece to hear because I think people get scared of saying, well, but I don't know it all, so do I have to go in with the bravado that they assume I can do it all? And it's okay to have that piece of I'm willing to learn here, bring what I am and the value I have, but also still learn alongside you. And I think that's a great piece for a lot of people to hear and to not feel alone in that piece of the transition.
Yeah, I actually hope there's a whole bunch of non-military veterans, not, there's no such thing, non-military people listening to this podcast. And I would like them to hear that take a risk on these people. Their resumes aren't going to stack up. Infantry doesn't stack up to, Harvard Business School. So it just doesn't, you're going to have to take a little bit of risk on that growth because when you look at somebody who's been doing in that field for so long, when on paper they look really good, but in reality, there's a lot of intangibles that it's hard to, we get the classes on how to translate it, but when you're looking at it from a business perspective, you look at that resume and you're like, okay, wow. And I actually use my own experience. I hired a chief operations officer in the last year as the CEO of AER, and I literally had a Harvard business, not I'm sorry, graduated from Harvard Law School as an applicant for our COO, and a wonderful person. And I had an infantry officer, and you look at the infantry officer, he write that any way he wants. That it doesn't. When you look at nonprofit, the other resume on paper looked really good. And somebody said, "Well, who'd you hire?" I said, "Well, I hired the infantry guy." So I did because I understood what the value was on that resume. But if I hadn't served 36 years in the army, I wouldn't have known that. And I was looking at it from a different business perspective. That other owner who'd never served in the army clearly picks, three other people to be their CEO than I did. And that's one thing I wish I could tell everybody that's never served in the army is I would say hire someone in your HR department that has a lot of military experience that can translate that, show you the value of what the military brings in your organization.
That's a great recommendation, and I've been in two organizations so far since I got out, and I could definitely say that that makes a huge difference when you have somebody that truly understands that. So, well, let's jump into AER. Tell us a little bit about Army Emergency Relief and what this is.
Well, I love Army Emergency Relief. Uh, and you said, some people have good and a bad perspective of AER. I'd say I thought you were actually talking about the Army or life. Everybody's got, positive or negative experiences in life. So uh, please, I would ask you all don't be judged by one experience. So with anybody, you see people, you go, oh, I thought this person was this way, and you change your mind. That could be AER, that could be the Army, that could just be any human being. So I just want to say that up front. But basically, Army Emergency Relief is the Army's nonprofit, and we're the only nonprofit in America that actually is just for the Army. We serve the active, guard, and reserve as long as the active and guard are on Title 10 longer than 30 days. And we provide financial assistance when are in a financial need. And it's always backed by this, tragic story of something that's bad happened. Their car broke down. They need help with health care, and then we provide them financial assistance. So I love what I do because I help soldiers every day to attend about 35,000 soldiers and families every day.
Wow, wow! I didn't realize that was the daily amount. That's
I'm sorry, every year. I
every
wish
year.
it was a day. Okay, well, it feels like it maybe. Sorry, every year. Sorry
Okay.
about that.
That's still
Yeah,
fantastic.
every
Still a
day.
lot.
It's still a lot. Yeah.
That's fantastic. And I've had soldiers through the years that definitely benefited from the use of AER, and it's always great to know that there is a program there for the worst case scenario. Essentially, when something you really need some sort of financial help. I've had great success using AER to help soldiers, and you know especially because they're a lot of times they're not thinking straight in
Right.
those times. It's a death of a family member. You're in Korea, they got to go back to the States, what have you. All kinds of different scenarios like that, paying bills. You know, so it's just the program itself. I personally love it. I think there's some great things to it. One of the things that I wanted to talk about today was, and I don't know if this is the right title for it, but it's a grant for transition. This program started right about the time I started my transition, and I was able to benefit from it, and it was fantastic to sort of help you with some of those intangible things that you don't really take into consideration when you're doing your transition, and especially if you're doing a skill bridge or an internship out of the area, something like this really comes in to help. So can you tell us a little bit about this program, and maybe if are there plans for it? Is it any changes coming to it?
Yeah, we have. Well, we haven't made we're not making any changes to the career skills program right now. Unfortunately, before I became the CEO, we actually had reduced it just a bit. It was so popular, we had to, bring it down a little bit. And I tell people, we're all donations based, and so I can't, you know, spend all my money in one program because there's a lot of other emergencies that we got to make sure that we have money for. So this one was really popular, and it still remains popular. So we do give grants for it's called the Career Skills Program. You can go online and say, if I'm a soldier transitioning and I need some assistance, you can get up if you're E4 and below, it's $500 grant, and if you're at E5, you get $250 grant. And if you need help with travel, you can apply for a grant too. So, meaning I want to go to Career Skills Skill Bridge, and it's not located at your base. If you're CODIS, you can apply for some money to go get help with the plane tickets. And if you're overseas, you can do the same thing. So yes, we have a really good program for that to help with plane tickets and some other things to get you maybe some clothing. I know I bought a lot of suits when I was like, wow, these suits are expensive. Can I just wear my uniform and I got to look different every day? What's up with that? so, it's like- so so yeah, we do grants and for E4 and below and E5, but we cut that back. Like I said, we don't have unlimited funds, so that the program was so popular. Um, we wanted to keep it going, but I didn't want to make sure. I want to make sure there are other programs that got that. And I'll give you an example: emergency travel. We made emergency travel in January 100%
Oh, wow.
grant.
Wow.
So if a soldier has a family member that dies and they qualify, meaning your parent, that's one of those qualifying family members. It's not every family member. Your third cousin passes away, and I know that's tragic, but unfortunately, we won't pay for that. Emergency travel. We follow the Army guidelines, but I wanted to make that 100% grant. So all these things that we do are competing, and I thought that is one of those things that I needed to make sure we had plenty of money for, which is emergency travel. But yes, we have a wonderful skill bridge. More we call it. It's not called skill bridge. It's just our career skills program (CSP) that you can qualify for.
Nice. And I don't disagree with that. Dr. Hira, what do you think of that program?
I mean, I think that's critical. A lot of people are like, how am I going to afford to take advantage of some of these opportunities? The travel gets in the way, and I think also the emergency fund for the bereavement travel is a big piece too. Because, as you said earlier, Shawn, when you're in those moments, it's hard to even think clearly, and again, you just want to be there. You don't want to have to worry about things, and to know you have this resource there to support you, and who understand that you're in and you're trying to do this travel. again, that connectedness, this extension of understanding, taking the leave, getting there, having really prompt travel, things of that nature. I think it's a wonderful resource that I'm glad we've brought on the show so that more people can learn about if they don't already know about it.
It's, it. I don't know that there's anybody in the army that doesn't know about it.
Oh yeah, there. Hey, Shawn. Oh no, there's a lot of. I go and I that's what I've been doing traveling. I like to go. I had this great idea. I was like, hey, let's go to the motor pools, because a lot of soldiers on Monday will go to the motor pool, do their maintenance, and so they'll probably have a large formation. I just remember as an artilleryman, we would do that every Monday. Yeah, every Monday for like my life. As a 13 Bravo, we'd always go Monday. And I said, let's go down there and give them a brief about AER. And I start off with who we are, and then I say what we help with, and then I say how to get help. And I'm telling you, once I break from that, every time I have somebody go, I didn't know you did that. I didn't know you did that. I didn't know you did that. So there's so many things that we help with that people don't know about what we do to help them. I think they just have this allergic reaction. I think when they hear Army Emergency Relief, they think that I'm going to walk up and ask, with my hand out like this for a donation. And it's the exact opposite. I want to tell you how we help you. And I need you to listen. We have programs for childcare. If you can't pay for your health care, and you get this big bill from TRICARE that says they're not going to pay, we're going to help you. So we got childcare programs, we got a healthcare program, we got the career skills program. When you transition you PCS, you've got if that big bill for that first month's rent, that safety deposit when you move to DC, it's like $10,000 later. You can't even afford to get a two-bedroom apartment because you can't afford the deposit and the safety deposit. We do that 50% is grant and 50% is loan. So I think you assume that people know, they don't. They just, that's what really breaks my heart is that so soldiers and families are under duress financially, and we have programs to help them, and they just didn't know that we were there, and they were super stressed about it, and they put a huge strain on their family, and they didn't have to.
So, just out of curiosity, I know this is completely opinion based. Do you think it's just sort of a change in culture? Because I felt like as a young soldier and then as an NCO, we constantly were told about AER. Maybe it was just unit based, the specific leaders we had. And I'm not counting my time when I was in the garrison. When I was in the garrison, obviously, AER becomes quite a big thing, and I got to be the one who helped run it the one year, and there's a lot that goes into that too. But just curious, your opinion. Do you think it's just maybe a change in how we're communicating or culture or something like that, or just leader based?
Yeah, I think it's a little bit of leader and culture of the Army. I think they had this allergic reaction to everybody. They think AER is not the Army's nonprofit. They think we're just like CFC or something. And it's not true. We actually have an Army regulation 930-4 actually covers AER. The Vice Chief of Staff, the Sergeant Major of the Army are on my board. There are three organizations in the Army that have active duty soldiers on their board: AFES, DECA, the commissary, and AER. So they're like, oh, you can't talk to my soldiers. You can't do this. Like, okay, it's not true. It's like I can. Um, and, and we just help them. I coined the phrase after 18 months ago. I didn't know it was that hard to help people. It's like,
Yeah.
it's like, and like I said, all I'm doing is trying to make sure they're aware of what we're doing so we can help them.
That's great. What about you, Dr. Hira? You got any questions on this?
I obviously talking to the units. How is this getting relayed again to the family side? Is this in their briefings, or again, can a family member reach out and connect rather than the soldier themselves? If the spouse is saying, "Hey, I think we need to ask for help," and maybe the soldier is a little resistant. How does that process of engaging with you work?
Yeah, we're working now on a family flyer or spouse flyer, just tailored to them. I've not approved it yet. It's like, no, we're not there yet. Our Marcom's doing a great job getting it tailored just to spouses. Unfortunately, there's only one program that specifically spouses can do without the
Okay.
active or the service member, which is domestic violence.
Yep.
That is it's always 100% a grant, and the spouse can apply for that independent of the service member. But all the other categories, we need the service member to approve it because if they get a loan, well, then we're going to take that. Normally, you have to start allotment through the soldier's pay, and like, could you imagine? You could like, hey, what is this? It's like, oh, your spouse got that, so we can't do that. So I really need spouses to bang on the service member's head and say, hey, these things we can apply for. These things, have you done this? Have you done this? I know. I'm speaking on my family. My wife's like, hey, have you done this? Have you done this? So I'm like, no, I haven't done it yet. So my favorite story, we was at JBLM, and we have an online application now, brand new. So you can just go to armyemergencyrelief.org, one big word. And in the middle of the top screen, there's a little thing that says application. You can fill out the whole application. And as a service member and a spouse came in to JBLM and they were doing the application on the computer. And the service member logged in for a couple minutes and he finally just like got up and his wife sat down and he goes, well, she does all this for me. She finished the application and all this stuff for him, which is fine. But unfortunately, if the spouse logs in and they can't have an account, it's unfortunate, but that's kind of how we run it. But again, I would ask spouses to say, hey, do you know about these programs? Did you know the Army Emergency Relief can help? And when I travel, one of those groups I always talk to are spouses to make sure they are aware of all the programs.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, absolutely, very very important, and I know my spouse was tracking on it.
Yeah, my wife, when I was a young sergeant first class, received a scholarship from Army Emergency Relief. Yeah, she's aware of that too. So, because we got some help from AUR and scholarships. So we actually do scholarships too. That's a big program that we have.
Nice.
So a lot of people aren't aware of that also.
Fantastic. Well, Dr. Hare, we're coming down to the end. Are you ready to
Oh my
take us
goodness.
out?
I'm sorry. Time flies when we're having these good conversations. I wasn't even tracking the time there. My bad. Before we wrap, though, I know you mentioned how to get to the application, though. What is the best place for the audience to connect with you directly if they wanted to find you?
Oh, if you want to find me, then you're going to have to just, the best way to do is just to send me an email. It's just michael.grinston at aerhq.org. Most people write .com. I don't know where that's going to go. It's maybe overseas somewhere. I don't know. That's not me. It is a .org email address. You can just send me an email directly. You can call the headquarters. You go to the website. There's a whole bunch of contact information on there. The best way to get assistance is go to the only way to get assistance really is to go there is go and start a login and then go because we have an all online application now. If you come in to the ACS office, an Army Emergency Relief officer can still help you, but they're probably going to give you a computer or tell you to pull out your phone to fill out the online application, and then it goes to them in their system. You can call our headquarters. We can do that for you. You can go to any base. You can go to Red Cross, but the easiest way is just go on and get the online application. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, Tony, thank you for coming on the show, talking about AER. On behalf of the VET S.O.S family, we'd like to thank everyone for joining us today. VET S.O.S is growing and expanding. You can follow us on all social media platforms. Make sure to check out all 3 of our shows and to follow and subscribe to wherever you get your podcasts from. We are on YouTube, Reese Across America Radio, The Parade Deck, and all your favorite podcast platforms. And remember, don't drown in the sea of transition. Grab the VET S.O.S Lifeline.